All right, so we've already looked at ATP in this class, but it's useful to do it again because this ATP is the energy storage molecule for short-term energy usage. This is how we power this, and we're going to talk about the structure of ATP and identify which bonds in that chemical structure hold the energy, right? And that make it so that we can use this stuff to power those chemical reactions. Okay, and I have a little link to this Amoeba Sisters animation that's available in the slides. All right, so let's look at the chemical structure of ATP. So ATP stands for acetylene triphosphate. So we are going to have our adenine base, just like we see in DNA and RNA, right? One of our nitrogenous bases. This is the A in the A base in DNA. Okay, we're also going to have this ribose sugar, a 5-carbon sugar called ribose. So this is the same sugar that we see in RNA. We remember that ribonucleic acid is the R stands for ribose. Okay, and then we have 3 phosphates. So add acetylene triphosphate means there's 3 phosphates. Okay, and so these phosphate groups we might remember are all negatively charged. So here's a negative charge on this oxygen, a negative charge on this oxygen, and this one has 2 negative charges. Okay, and if you've ever tried to put magnets together with the South Pole facing the South Pole, what you're going to feel is that there's going to be some resistance. They're going to repel each other because like charges, right, that are either 2 positive charges or 2 negative charges are going to, gross, get away from me, right? We're going to have electrostatic repelling of those like charges. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 of these negative charges and we're going to stack them all together. They're going to be pushing against each other quite rapidly. So our high energy bonds, our highest energy bond is right here, that's holding this 3rd phosphate group on. We can take that phosphate group, we can pop it off. This is, we'll also then have this other high energy bond from our acetylene monophosphate. And our adenosine diphosphate, that means 2 phosphates. So those 2 bonds, being and being, are where all of that energy is stored. When these inorganic phosphate groups pop off, right, that's going to release that energy that can be then used to power whatever the cell needs to have happen. Okay, so most of the time we're going to talk about the ATP cycle going from our acetylene triphosphate. We're going to pull off that 3rd phosphate group, and that's going to give us adenine diphosphate, right? So leaving 2 phosphate groups. This 3rd phosphate group is an inorganic phosphate, so that's what that little I, the subscript I, means. It stands for inorganic. Okay, but the reason that that's important is that that energy, right, that's holding that 3rd phosphate on is then released so that we can use that to power cell things. Okay, but eventually, if we're always using ATP, right, then we're eventually going to run out of batteries. So we need a way to recharge our batteries. So there's going to be methods that cells have that we'll talk about later in the semester, where we can take our ADP molecule and throw that other inorganic phosphate back on, right? It's going to require energy input, right? Because we have this catabolic, or sorry, where when we take our ADP, we're going to have an anabolic reaction where we're going to take that phosphate group and we're going to shove it back on there to reform our ATP. That's going to require energy input. We're going to talk a lot about all the details of that later in the semester. Again, that's our cell respiration chapter.